كله
أنا أسمع الخيط دوس
Where's the horizon?
in the box. Right, you don't know where the hand office is. You're Kevin Pierce. It's not even Bushel. It's no Bushel. Not Bushel.
Don't let you have notice.
Yeah, why?
There's a whole box of noble toast. What's that? Yeah, fine. You could take that. Open that. There's a whole box of noble toast. What? Noble toast. Take out those. Those are also good. Yeah. Let me see. Not this one, the other one.
So, how many under the boxes of cookies?
Yeah. Okay.
Good? Yeah. Okay, good. Enough.
That one's one. Just one in the box, the open box.
Here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech music.
The right mindset.
Where's Menachem Mendel? I thought we were waiting the whole time for Menachem Mendel.
He left to get behind.
Vayizra Yitzchak ba'aretz hahi vayimtza b'shana hahi meya sha'arim vayivaracheyu Hashem. That's the pasuk, right? What's the taich vayimtza b'shana hahi meya sha'arim? No. What's the taich of the word? What?
100 times the amount. 100 times more than he expected.
It's from Savers. Savers is giving out kugel now.
A lot more than kugel.
Yeah. I'm talking about what's kosher. What is taich vayimsa b'shana hahi meya sha'arim? There's a city in Yerushalayim called Meya Sha'arim. What is the taich of the word Meya Sha'arim? What?
It was a week for the first year before they built the section. The matzahs by skipping the matzahs. Grew Meya Sha'arim now.
What is the taich of the word Sha'arim? This pasuk?
It means
In the
Evaluation.
price.
The Shiur.
What?
Shiur.
No, it's the price.
Value.
So Moshe is right. Although in Mefarshim there's two pshatim, the Rebbe but in Mefarshim itself seems like the main taich is what Moshe said, and that's the Sicha. There's a bunch of diyukim that are all seem to be based on this taich. Vayimsa b'shana hi meya sha'arim. He found 100 times what he was Mishayah. So Rashi taiches, what does it mean 100 times what he was Mishayah? Sha'amdu akama re'uya lases v'asasal achas sha'amdu meya. They shatzed up how much it was able to make. Yeah, that's the sha'arim. The sha'arim means they have an agishatz. They estimated how much it's going to make, and it made 100 times. That's taich meya sha'arim. V'rabiseinu amru emed zel meiser sayim. That's what Rashi is meisif. It's a medrash, and we'll soon see the Rebbe is teaching the medrash completely different than Rashi. So the Rebbe says a meridik chiddush that doesn't seem to be found anywhere, even though details of it are found, and some of them seemingly because they stole it from the Sicha. But the general pshat is a completely new pshat that the Rebbe is pashat machriach, and it's a meridik pshat mitzad the teichem and mitzad the beer in Rashi and every detail. The Rebbe says the second pshat is not a teisvus beer; it's a chelek on the first pshat, and the Rebbe is machriach one of the main hechrechim. It's a different pshat than the first pshat.
It has to. The second beer is coming on to the first. It's coming after the first pshat.
It's a different pshat than the first pshat. And that's what
So the Rebbe says that there's two things. That Reisha is to give a bracha in dem gewachsenen Tfuah. Dit gekommen was die gewähren und Erz Kosher und die Shana Kosher ist gewähren Kidu, das hat gewähren Erz Tever Shana Tever. Und erst noch
that's unconnected with the first pshat. There was a bracha despite it being an Eretz Kosher v'Shana Kosher. Holidays it says b'Shana Ahi and ba'Aretz Ahi, and that Shana Ahi and Aretz Ahi is independent of these two pshatim in the Meya Sharim. In Meya Sha'arim there's two taichim. And that's the chiddush of the Rebbe, that it's two different taichim in Meya Sha'arim. That's where the chiddush is. The first taichim Meya clear? What's one of the main bases that the Rebbe brings? Because it doesn't say v'amru Rabbi Seinu, it says v'Rabbi Seinu amru. Rabbi Seinu amru means Rabbi Seinu said a different pshat. If this is a teisvus beer in the first pshat, just what that oimed that the first pshat spoke about was v'amru Rabbi Seinu about this pshat, oimed zel meisters. Rabbi Seinu amru means this is what the first pshat is, but Rabbi Seinu said a different pshat. That's what the Rebbe says at the end of page 121. This diuk. Yeah, besides a bunch of other diukim. Now, the Medrash says, Oymed zel meisres haya. The Medrash is asking a question. What is the Medrash explaining with the Oymed zel meisres haya? The Medrash is explaining how did they know that they had so much tefillah that was 100 times the expected amount. Zakt of them the Medrash and the Medrash's question is, what's the question? The question is that there's a din that ein abracha mitzuya ela b'davar hasamim min ayin, so you shouldn't have a count of how much tefillah you have. Of them zakt the Medrash oymed zel meiser sayah, that they estimated it to take meiser. That's why they had to get the count. And once they were getting the count, they realized that it was 100 times more than what they expected to have. And this raises a lot of questions, like we're going to see. Where do you see that Rashi is not learning like the Medrash? So first of all, Rabbi Seinu Amru and not Amru Rabbi Seinu. according to the Medrash, there's no stira between the two pshatim. The second pshat is like an added dimension of the first pshat. Vives mendas. Second of all, according to Rashi, you don't have the question of the Medrash. Pshuta shel mikra haben kemol nish gelernt azak klal azeina bracha mitzuya ala b'davar asami min ha'ayin. So in Rashi, you don't have a question of how did they know. What? In Rashi, you don't have a question. How did they know? They counted it. They counted it to see how much it is. The Medrash, in Halacha, we know they ain't a bracha mitzuyel b'davar asami min ha'ayin. I mean, you could sail in unless they had a reason. So that's another reason. He says, furthermore, in Rashi, that can't be the question on the measuring afterwards. Key, look in the second paragraph in Ha'ara 7. Miloshin Rashi, oimed ze l'maisris kai. What? Yeah, oimed ze l'maisris haya muchrach de kai ad la'il minei. Oimed de sha'arim v'loi vayimtza. The first raya of the Rebbe is what?
Who's going on why it should have said, why they were looking, it should have been on Vayimtza, not on...
Well, no. That's going to be the next raya. This raya is from the Oimed Zeh. There was the first pshat. The second pshat is speaking about the same Oimed that the first Oimed was, that he spoke about before. The first pshat of Rashi was Amdu Kama Ru'uya Lases, and it made 100 times more. The Amduhu was not when they counted it after it produced its full. The Amdu was beforehand. That's what it made 100 times more than. According to the Medrash, the Oimed Del Meisers is explaining how they counted it after it made 100 times more.
The Rebbe is saying that the image from Isis has to be after. The Rebbe says in the opinion later, the image from Isis has to be after.
Not after. We're talking about there's a evaluating or estimating that could take place before this bracha, before this ribui. There's a counting after the ribui. Let's learn Beis first, and then we'll come back to Aleph and see what Beis. Rashi stellt sich ala teves meya sha'arim ve'enei mevi klal teves vayimtza kebemedrasha. In the pasuk it says two things. It says vayimtza, how much tefillah he ended up with. It says that the tefillah that he ended up with was meya sha'arim, 100 times what he expected it to make. According to the Medrash, the question is on the Vayimtza. How did you ever come to know how much tefillah you made if Eina Bracha Mitzuya B'Davar Asami Min Ha'ayin? So besides the fact that that's not a question of Pshuta Shel Mikra, if that's what Rashi was coming to explain, then the Dibra Maskal should have the Vayimtza. Even though it's the Meya also. Yeah, but Rashi, the main question is on the Vayimtza. How do you know that? How do you know it's 100 times as much if you didn't count it? That's the Medrash's question. You're not allowed to count. And Rashi doesn't bring the Vayimtza. So according to Rashi, the counting is talking about the first counting. Yeah, your count. There's a number that they counted. There's when it made 100 times more. Is the first counting, not the Vayimtza. The counting was licked in the word Sha'arim. Sha'arim is Milashon Hashara. That's the estimation that they originally made. That 100 times was 100 times more than that. So the second inyan that the Rebbe says is the fact that Rashi doesn't bring the Vayimsa. The Medrash questions on the Vayimsa. The first inyan that the Rebbe says is because it says Oymed Zeh. Rashi says Oymed Zeh. It's the same Oymed that the first pshat is talking about. The first pshat that says they were Amduhu and it made 100 times more is for sure talking about the initial Amdu that happened before it grew. Then the Rebbe brings a third right. This is just to get the general thing. The Medrash is talking about one thing, Oymed Zeh L'Maisros. The Rebbe is learning in Rashi, and some of the Mefarshim learn partially like that in Rashi, that we're talking about an Oymed that happened beforehand. Yeah. Even if it was an Oymed that happened beforehand, yeah, who the machlekes zwischen the zwei pirushim? According to the first pshat in Rashi, the Sha'arim is also talking about the Oymed that happened beforehand. So now comes the Rebbe with this Meire de Kechidish. What's the difference between the first pshat and the second pshat? According to the first pshat, it's Amdu hu kama ru'uya lasis. The 100 times more was more than the amount that they thought it would make, the amount that it should have made, which is a nes, but not such a big nes. Rabbi Seinu haben ufketan that it was an Oymed L'Maisros, and an Oymed L'Maisros could only be after the tfuah grew and it was harvested.
And then it became older.
No, it doesn't say that.
I don't need it. I'm just sitting.
I'm gonna fall asleep.
With that big coffee.
What?
I was about my shit.
So from Rashi says the Rabbi Seinu haben ufgetan that the Oymed, the first Oymed, because it's still talking about Oymed Zeh, the first Oymed was L'Maisros. We're talking about after the tfuah grew, and it's complete, and it's completely ready. Und erst jemalt came a nest, that's a nest that completely has no achiza in Teva, that's the Meire de Kechidish of the Rebbe. Has no achiza at all in Teva, that tfuah that grew and was complete and was finished, suddenly became 100 times more.
What does actually mean? I've seen Oymed Zeh. What's Oymed Zeh?
Oymed Zeh, this same Oymed that we're talking about, that the Sha'arim is talking about, again, the Sha'arim means Sha'arua. Sha'arim is the Hash'ara that would happen in advance. This Hash'ara, that's the Oymed, that's L'Maisros. So therefore the what?
Remember Shiur before
From Shiur Meisers?
before the
Never says that you can't
No. After they
We'll
were
learn in a second, hold on. Yeah, that's what it means.
After it grew the first one.
before it became 100 more.
Before it expanded.
It counted, after it grew, it counted.
It grew, and it was finalized, it was finished. Yeah, let me...
And then they counted it.
And then
Then they counted it.
Noch in fertig werden von den Tfuah.
They did that.
I measured exactly, so then suddenly it grew 100 times more. Yeah. Das verstehst du nicht.
Why is it called Shiur?
Yeah.
They did that.
Comes the Rebbe in Ha'ara 8. So let's see in the Pnim over here. On Lefiza is their Pirush from Meir Sha'arim. So this is first of all a Meir de Kechidish Pashat and Pshat in Rashi, that the Rebbe was machriach from all these ways. But it comes out that the Rabbi Seinu have been ufketan a ganze Chidish in the Nes, a whole different type of a Nes, Bein Areich. And later in the Sicha, the Rebbe's Masber, that's why it's called Rabbi Seinu. On Lefiza is their Pirush from Meir Sha'arim, as she noch im fertig werden von der Tfuah, und ich noch in Abschatzen, is nit bloß abgeschätzt nach euch, und nit bloß abgeschätzt nach euch genau abgemasten. Not this nest happened not only over a hash'ara that happened in advance, that could be not accurate. It happened after the tfuah was grew and it was exactly measured, because it has to be measured exact to take meiser. Wie viel tfuas ist da? Und ist mitamal zugekommen in ihr 100 Mal, als viel schön nach in Eis wachsen. So the Rebbe says in Ha'ara 8, he calls it a Oimed, but the Rebbe says according to the second shot of Rashi that Oimed Zelu Meiser Saya, it wasn't really a Oimed. It was an exact measurement. Sharei ein ma'asrim ba'oimed. Rambam Hilchos Meiser. V'chein moving gam b'pashtos me'ashem Meiser. Meiser means an exact amount. U'mashakasav Rashi oimed v'loi medida ki bo lefarish tevas sha'orim shebekasav. That Rashi says oimed is because he's coming to explain the word sha'orim in the pasuk. How do we understand this sha'orim? The Rebbe says that the Oimed Zelu Meiser Saya means that the 100 times more was more than an exact measurement. And the Hechrech is because it was a Meiser, so it had to be an exact measurement. And nonetheless, it increased by 100 times as much. Why does it say Oimed? Because the Pasuk says Sha'arim. Why does it then Hagufa Kasha? Why does the pasuk say Sha'arim if Sha'arim is referring to the measurement that was done for Meiser according to Rabbi Seinu, which has to be an exact measurement? How do we understand the Sha'arim? So, yeah, it seems like a Pella. But this is a very Yesedistic, central part of the whole Sikha. This is the whole beer of the Rebbe revolves around this. Right. So there is another pshat in Mefarshim. And this is in Heintiger. So it's probably partially stolen from there. But no, it's a sefer called Yikra de Reisa. He says like this: Tvur has to be Meiser could only be taken when the Tvur is completely full grown, and it can't be b'mechuber. Says he brings a Ramah. He says usually tfuah till it was harvested, it's a davar shlei b'leilam. It's still growing. So there's a Ramah in. Could you bring a Cheshem Mishpat Simin Reish Tas?
Bottles. Anybody? Any cups in the
Hands
In this office?
I'll leave it up
There, but I don't know. Read Simin Reish Tas Siv Gimel, I think. Siv Dalet. Cheshem Mishpat Simin Reish Tas Siv Dalet.
What do you want? What cups? Yeah. Huh?
Read Siv Dalet.
So Chavar. You want that girl's eating? What? I like girl's eating. There you go. Oh!
Hold on. Yeah. Start again. Lot of
אין אדם מקנה דבר שלא בא לעולם בין במחר, בין במתנס ברי, בין במתנס חמרה, כיצד, מה שטוב.
That's your shit. It's your shit.
You drunk before you even read.
No, that's your shit. You didn't want.
כיצד, מה שטייס ישראל לזו, מחר לך, מה שיעשי לנזה, נסן לך, פנו מה שתהל להם איזו לפלניה, שאמר.
Are you reading Siv Aleph or Siv Dalet?
No, that's your shit.
Yeah, okay. No, it's good. Yeah.
שאמר, מה שתהל לפרסיה של חסם
Okay.
מחר לך.
Zak the Ramah. No Ramon Sifdalit?
On what? The hut goes all the way there, buddy.
Don't worry, everyone's speaking today. No, there's no more.
Is it not the
Actually,
Ramon?
no.
Should be.
Yeah,
right.
Hagar right there.
Yeah.
Hagar Chaver Shikim.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, Chelek.
I'm not going to say the Mea Yain, Kshimacher Hayain.
No. Sorry.
It's a long Ramah. It's a long Ramah. I didn't say it was short. I was buying time.
Stop.
Miu. It's in a parentheses in the beginning. Miu gabe ilan imchantu haperis mikri bala elam. He says like this: by a tree, once the peris blossomed, it's called a davar shabala elam. We're not talking about meiser here. We're talking about mechira. But it was mechira. Once it's chantu, then it's called a davar shabala elam. I could sell it. The peris didn't grow yet. I can't sell them. Ain't other mecher makna davar shabala elam. After the chanata, you could sell them. It's called a davar shabal elam. Based on this, so these achreinim say that meiser they bring from Peskim, that meiser has the same din as hakna. Once it's chantu, it's called a davar shabal elam, and you could take meiser.
Chantu is what? Blossom?
It blossomed, yeah. It's heavy shlish basically. It's not completely finalized.
What do you mean meiser?
What?
Unripe fruit. What do you mean meiser?
According to them, they're not coming to answer this question, but according to them, verstatement for was is a amen. There's even a machlekes a peskim. They bring a machlekes nicht in a Lubavitch yeshiva geret, but a machlekes between the Chazon Ish and Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. What happens if you took meiser after the chanata, and then it grew more a different amount than it seemed like it would grow? Were you yetzer with that meiser, or do you have to take a now separate meiser because your calculation was wrong?
Chiyuv meiser starts by the chanata right away?
Not the chiyuv. You're allowed to take by the chanat.
That's when the chiyuv
It's not a period. What? Because meiser has to be a tenth. If it turned out it wasn't a tenth, because like by the shayla is by Yitzchak. It turned out it wasn't a tenth, it was 1%, because it made 100 times more. It was 0.1%.
You say it's called Ayman, even though it was completely nigmar v'balda afterwards.
So first of all, according to them, they are good. According to them, is understood the Ayman, because they did it in advance. They did a chanata, weil gewinn verstandig as is a Ayman. But according to the Rebbe, that the Rebbe is emphasizing that this hour it was completely nigmar. The Rebbe is bichlal not saying this word. It's for what heißt das sha'arim.
That's because they can only take meiser from it. Can't do the take meiser.
But there's according to them, you're calling it oimed because you're taking an exact amount. It's not oimed. What you can't do is I can't estimate about a tenth. It has to be an exact tenth. They're taking an exact tenth, but based on what it is now. So according to them, would be very understood why it's called oimed. The oimed is because I'm still evaluating, I'm estimating, I'm guessing the way it's going to finish. And ad kedei kach, that's what I'm showing you. There's a machlekes a peskim l'peyo. What happens if it's not that amount? Das heißt, it's all based on my ashara. Or as ashara megme machen, because I have already the process started. So according to them, volt gewen verstandig oimed, but the Rebbe is not seemingly not learning like that. The Rebbe is emphasizing it was completely complete. Sagt Moshe, darf ich sagen da ein anderes Wort. Because the Rebbe is saying oimed, und da Meister ist nicht oimed, und es steht sha'arim. Why does it say sha'arim? According to the first pshat in Rashi, it says sha'arim because they were mishayer. It happened when the tvua didn't start growing yet. They looked at the field and they were getting an estimate for the field. The estimate is a hashara. According to the Rabbi Seinu, this was what has to come out. The Rebbe doesn't spell it out in this Hara. But the pshat is going to be like Moshe said. According to Rabbi Seinu, it's sha'arim because lefi ha'emes it's sha'arim. Das heißt, Ulufia Emes, it turned out that wasn't the amount. So Limafreya is the Ashara. At the time, it was an exact count, but that exact count, since it made 100 times more, in whatever way, is jetzt ist das Kumteisa, das nicht given account. It was a Ashara. It was not a Ashara based on guessing. It was a Ashara based on counting, but it wasn't a real count. It was a Ashara because it didn't make that. So that's why the pasuk says Sha'arim, and says the Rebbe, that's why Rashi says Oimed. Not a Oimed mitzad the person, but the thing was Oimed. The pasuk says Sha'arim. Yeah, because the Rebbe just sent us back to the pasuk. So you have to say, the Vertach Agreis Akasha. Is the Teretz Muzayin that's the Sha'arim is Al Shem Sefer, according to the second Pshat Rashi, and that's why Rashi calls it Oimed. Yeah. I'm telling you, Sha'arim. No, Sha'arim means a Hashara. Because the whole point of this pasuk is that das is nicht given levaseif. According to both Pshatim and Rashi, that beginning, that amount, that count turned out to be incorrect. So Al Shem Sefer, when it made 100 times as much, is das lemafreya given nara hashara. It was Ashara based on real information, yeah?
When they counted Mea Sha'arim.
No. They never counted Mea Sha'arim. The Mea and the Sha'arim is, yeah. It's 100 times this Sha'arim. That's how the Taich of the Pasuk is. That's why the Sha'arim, that's why I showed you that other Ha'ara. But the Rebbe's whole diuk is that Rashi is going on the Sha'arim, not on the Vayimsa. These are two different stages.
When was the Amadur Lamaisa?
What?
When was the Amadur Lamaisa?
When is the what?
Amadur Lamaisa.
According to the Rebbe?
Yeah.
After the pre was completely ready. They didn't harvest it yet, seemingly, yeah. But it was completely finished. Its full was finalized. And now they counted it. And then Mitamo came a growth. And that's why later on the Rebbe says, it's like a nes nifla. And that the Rebbe is machriach from Rashi. That's state in Rashi. Now, there's a big tumul in the Mefarshim over here. That states in Nachas Sefer. Pardes Yesek brings. Let me read to you what he brings. Alle bleiben mit Grese Shailas. He brings first from a Chavis Yar, Chuvas Chavis Yar. It says in the Mishnah, Altar Bela Aser Umadis. And it says in the Teisvus Yantif and the Mishnah, B'Shem Medrash Shmuel, Hu Adim Ma'at. The Lashon is Altarbe, but the Emes is as Meiser Kaminish Nemen Umadis. They brought it from a simple svara. It's Meiser Kadas Nishzayin Min Ha'imit. Says the Chavis Yar, Va'ani Tama, Shalei Zochar Adam Divrei Chazal V'Iskiru Rashi, Meya Sha'arim Di Yitzchak Eimet Zele Meiser Saya. Shma Mina Shenitan Al Pi Eimet. They're made the Keshayla. Yeah. Then the Chavis Yar says, Hugufa tzarech iyan ubir emasad amduhu, shari madadu matzu meya sharim. He says, when was this aimed? What's his second question? He's learning like the Medrash. The Eimed Zela Meisters was when they found it. When they found it, they found Me'asharim. They found Me'asharim, they actually measured it. If them frektach the Medrash, and the Rebbe and Be'emes and the Ha'aretz is machriach from the Medrash that at that point there wasn't a Eimed. Because the Medrash's whole question is Ein Bracha Mitzuyela B'davar Sami Min Ha'ayin. Eimed is not a stira to that cloud, the Rebbe said. So the whole question is based on the fact that there was a measurement. So what, they did a Eimed and right afterwards they did a measurement. The Ganze is a Chatish converter. So that's what the Chavis here has another question. So his second question, obviously, according to the Sichos, is not a question. And then he says, Bechlal, he doesn't understand just some derech hagav, so he asks the other question that the Rebbe asks later in the Sichos, the Chavis here asks. Was it the grace in my rebusa was haaretz kusha v'ashana yivesha, so gam ha'imid hayamat. Which is later in the Sikha, the Rebbe says that's the problem with the first pshat in Rashi. What? Oimid Zelamaisha. The Rebbe brings the Medrash in the beginning. I think that was the lesson of the Medrash. So it says over here. What?
The most Medrash is
okay, so the Medrash Bechal doesn't bring the Lashon name. It makes sense.
He's asking the Rashi.
Yeah, he brings Rashi. The Chavos. And he Tomash Ezacher Divrei Chazal v'Itzkiri Rashi. I guess it says that Lashon somewhere else. So the Chavos Yar says v'yesh liyashav kol zeh b'deichik on a bleibt mit hashayla. The Chassam Sefer sagt auf them that the meiser that this pasuk is talking about is the meiser that you give for the taxes to the melech. Nicht in kasher von der din. Na fragt auf sich, es ist sehr schwer, es ist doch ein Rambam, ja, was steht in Rambam? It's a tike meisters learned from the pasuk. Meile sagt doch some sefer a ganze pilpul that when there's a guy who's a shutif, you're pater min in the tvua, you're pater min meisters, for him is nuna. So Kolzman he's mechuyev in taxes to the melech, then he's pater min meisters. So therefore, first he had to give the meiser the tax to the melech, and only then he was able to take his meisters. So that pshat is a pella, then it doesn't say anywhere that Yitzchak took meisters. He says another pshat that first Yitzchak Havaita, but it's all based on this hanacha. He took the meiser was to give a tax to the king. He says the Eibishter wouldn't make the nest until he gave the tax to the king.
Why does he want to learn that?
What?
Why does he want to learn that?
What?
That he's giving taxes to the king.
Because otherwise there's a kashal tarbala asur modes. If the oimid was l'meiser, then it's a stira to the din that you're not allowed to take meiser mi-oimid.
It doesn't have a place, it doesn't have a market that Yitzchak took meiser b'chal.
According to his Torah, that's very strange. He's being mefalpel because he's trying to answer this question. Yeah, so this is the mefarshim are stuck with a big problem over here. According to the Rebbe, is misyashiv. Yeah, the ganze kasha geht harab. The oimed was an exact count. According to them, if it's an exact count, why is it called oimed? Because they're all learning like the Medrash. This whole deal that the Rebbe made, that the Medrash and Rashi had two different things, and that's why we learned that Ha'ara, because that's the basis. Two rayas, the Rebbe brings a third raya that we didn't learn inside. And the raya from the Shulei Hagilya, that in the Rashi wouldn't have that question of the Medrash. Yeah, the Medrash is saying a whole different word. So in the Medrash, Eimed Zela Meisters is going on the Vayimtza, is the counting at the end after Altas Farti geworden. So then that is the final count. This whole reason that we're saying according to the Sichos called the Eimed is the Shaykh in the Medrash. It's a Great Sekashal, Tarbel Aser Umadis. Mashenkin, according to the Rebbe's beer, the Rebbe says that the Eimed was Lemeister's Taka, full count, but after that came this bracha, Vasatin Ganzen Ishken Achiza and Teva. It's called Eimed, why she said, because the Pasuk Sharim, because Lemafreya Gloi Milta, that it was Ashara, is Hatas Ishke Shaykhs with Eimed de Lemeisters. So that's L'cheira, a whole yishuv of Akasha Ala Blai B'Shver. Okay.
Come to the wall.
Now the Rebbe in the Hemshech has a question. So why did the Eibishter doesn't make unnecessary nisim? Why did the Eibishter make the Nes to such a degree? So the Rebbe says, because Hagufa. Rashi bavarns this. That's the reason why you need the first pshat, Peladik and Nes. But Rashi bavarns this. For us is gekommen the Nes. Why couldn't the Nes be done in a more tevadik eifim? It says late that other pirish that I told you that they did the Eimed b'shas techanata. So the Nes is not yetzi midarkei ateva to such a degree. By the chanata, it's still in the process of growing. Came a spurt of growth that went completely beyond everything. Yeah, it could have come before, and it could have come b'shas to growth. Why taka did it come in such a way that's yetzi migidrei ateva? Says the Rebbe bavantas Rashi. The whole chiddush of the Rebbe is that Rashi v'Rabbeinu omru emed zel meiser saya. That Rashi with that is coming to change the time of the emed. So why does Rashi say it in such an indirect way? That from the fact that he says l'meiser, and I know hilchas meiser, so b'meila I know that it was after the tefillah was complete. Say emed zel la'achar shenigmar tefillah. Says the Rebbe that with this Rashi is coming to tell us it was b'schus ha-meiser. The mitzvah of Meiser. Yeah. For was takat the Nes, weil the bracha from Meisham is coming b'schus mitzvahs Meiser. And that's why it didn't come. Yeah, that's why it didn't come in a more tavadik way, even though it still has a question from. So first of all, derech agav. So this sefer Yikra Deiraisa from a heintige person that brings up pshat, that says the pshat of Chanata, but he says ve'efsher loymar de masha haisif kol kach arbe hayadavka mikeach mitzvahs hamaisim. Yeah. But he adds something which l'cheira, that's the word of the Rebbe in the Sicha. The Rebbe is not mitzayin to, but we do find that always. What's up is b'schus mitzvahs meiser. What's the reasoning? Because meiser we know has the skula aser b'shvil shetisasher. Meiser brings us shiros. B'chanuni na bazei says a machlek is what you're allowed to say. Lepel it says it about staka, but where are you allowed to say it? L'kuli alma. The pasuk of b'chanuni na bazei is talking about meisers. Bring the mitzvah of meiser kipshute. So therefore, that the Rashi says is that the Rebbe is learning was b'schus mitzvahs meiser, but pashtas connected with this unique skula of the mitzvahs meiser. Yeah, fine. So the Rebbe says, therefore it came b'schus mitzvahs meiser. It's a big chiddush in the Nes, and then the Rebbe says in Yena Shal Teira. Yena Shal Teira.
What the first piddush? Du Kameruni. That's like Mamash Hashad, right?
Sure.
That's beforehand.
Yeah.
So the second piddush, then I'm Eimed Zeh. So it's going Behemshech to the first Eimed.
It's going Behemshech.
No, like the way we type it, Eimed Zeh means that it's exact counting. So Eimed
Zeh, says the Rebbe. What's the Eimed Zeh? This Eimed that was multiplied 100 times wasn't before anything happened. It was l'maisers. It happened. It was at a later stage. The Eimed that was. We're talking Eimed Zeh means, as opposed to the Medrash that this the Eimed of l'maisers was later on. No, this very Eimed that was multiplied. There was a certain Eimed. There was a certain count that ended up being multiplied by 100 times. This Eimed happened at a later stage because it was l'maisers. That's the way the Rebbe is teaching the Rabbi.
Before it actually multiplied. Before it actually multiplied.
According to both pshatim, it's before it multiplied.
No.
Yeah, but according to the first pshat, before it multiplied was a hashara. It says Eimed Zeh was later and still it multiplied.
After it grew, after it.
Yeah. So in the Yena Shal Teira, the Rebbe says a whole word. This is the chiddush of the second pshat, that it comes from Rabbi Seinu. It's a keach of Rabbi Seinu, and when someone learns Teira, then he has a keach of Rabbi Seinu, and the Rebbe adds a chiddush in the second pshat. So already in the beginning of the Sikha, there's the Chapela de Kechiddush in the second pshat in Rashi. That again, we can't understand the Rashi. Once we learn all these diukim, doesn't seem to say anywhere else. It's a whole revolutionary pshat and a revolutionary nes. But here the Rebbe adds another point in the Chiddush of the nes. Not only that it has no achiza and teva, it's a nes versus lechera and kegen the gidrei hatera. Because if it went against Maisris, they counted it at a time that they're allowed to count it. Chanata, you're allowed to count it, but you're counting it based on a hashara. You know, it could grow. You're choosing to count it then. Once the tfuah is completely nigmar, it's nigmar al pitera. That's why I'm taking Meiser now. That means al pitera, this is the amount that's going to grow. For it to grow later a different amount than the Meiser that I took, goes against Gidrei Hatera. It's al derech, it says in Svarim. It's brought down, I think it's brought b'shem the Chidush Yarim and others. It says that if a person gets lost in Mayim She'in Lam Seif, you're not matter his wife. Someone drowns in Mayim She'in Lam Seif means if you can't see the end of the water, that's called Mayim She'in Lam Seif. Then, if the person drowned, maybe he came up outside of your vision. If you could see the edges of the water and someone chas v'shalom drowns over there and there's two Eidim, he didn't come up, he didn't surface, then you're matter his wife. Mayim she'en lam seif, you're not matter. Which is a huge chumrah. The lady is an aguna. The guy that they're in the middle of the ocean, like where he went thousands of feet and he came up. It's a very, very big chumrah. And always was for aguna, mishum aguna, hikilu. So the question is, why over here did the Chacham go such an extreme to be mach? State in Svarim that if the Chachamim would be makel, if they would say that Mayim Shein Lam Seif, he drowned, and then the wife is mutter, that means we're saying al pitera that this guy died, that it would be impossible for him to ever be saved, because al pitera he's dead. So the Chachamim were very machmer on the woman that al pitera there should be a possibility for him to be saved. If the halacha would be that the wife is mutter when someone drowns in Mayim Shein Lam Seif, that means that Torah is saying that this guy is for sure dead. Once Torah says it's for sure dead, so therefore, because Torah says he's dead, that means it's impossible for him to be saved. Torah doesn't let. Then it would be impossible for a guy. In order that there should be a possibility that people should tackle sometimes really be saved, so the Chacham were very machmer on the woman. What?
Okay. And if there's a safe to mine,
You can see.
Ma'aseh safe is al pi derech hateva, he can't be saved. Al pi derech hateva, he can't be saved. You see that he didn't come up. Whatever the amount of time is, he didn't come up. That's what it says. It's brought down in a few places. Brought down. I think there's a tiny with what? What?
The straight of your thumbs. Cloth, straight of your thumbs.
What?
So mine shouldn't say much.
No.
The din, yeah.
Talk about the Hasbara.
This comes from Chassidish Svarim. What?
That's where that was like.
That the reason why the Chachamim were machmer is so that al pitera. So the Rebbe is saying over here similar. The Rebbe is saying over here.
You won't find that.
You'll find it in Rashi and in the Gemara. Once you see the words, you'll see it in the Gemara. I once saw a Gemara that's musbar only like this word. But al kopanim, so the Rebbe is saying seemingly a similar word. Once you're saying al pitera, this is the amount of meiser that I'm allowed to take. That means as a virgin al pitera that it can't grow more. So now Rabbi Seinu Amru, das gewen a Netz was geht an kegen the Hagbolus von Teira Kilo. That's the second Chiddush in the second part of the Sichos. So the Rebbe says that's the Kayach of Rabbi Seinu. Here's the words. B'shas Ayid learned Teira. In page 127, as the Teira is Nisatzin Gevarim mit them. Bis is Gevarim Teira say Zain Teira, like it says in Kiddushin. Was move on Eich Kipshutei, nor Demot Kanavern Eine von Rabbi Seinu. He says, first he's saying that it's a Darga and Limud Teira. So who says we're talking about such a darga? He says in the most simple sense, it's Rabbi Seinu Amru. And the Rebbe said already earlier in the Sikha, this whole thing is Bekeach Rabbi Seinu Denas. It says also this Inyan to break through Ragbalis is through someone who's Teira Dilehu, which that's the, if someone became Rabbi Seinu, it had to be that he was learning Teira. So the ones who are saying this pshat, who are being described as Rabbi Seinu, we're describing people who reached a darga of Limud Teira and even of Teira Dilehu. So when someone reaches that level to their balabas kaviyachal eif teira. When afem amur azal man malki rabbanim as the rabbanim zen in the balabatim and the mulachim and we are paskant as they vert the mitzias. So this concept is we find what? What did you say? With this concept we find that the Chachamim are Balabatim and Teira, and the Eibishter says, me and you are going to go to Beis Shamat, so we find it in various places. Over here, the Rebbe brings it from the Maimar Azal, Leisaser ben Adover, Asher Yagidu L'chayam and Osmeo. As das is a filu in fal, when the Rabbanan Eimim L'chal Yemin Shu Smeo V'Asmeo Shu Yemin. It's a Rashi ala Teira. So you see that the Chachamim have a koyach to go break through the boundaries of Torah, because they're saying something that al pi Torah is smeil, and they're saying that it's Yemin, or something that is al pi Torah Yemin, and they're saying that it's smeil. So really, there's a big shaklavitaya in what this means and when this applies, and the Rebbe in the bottom of the Ha'ara brings a lot of marmakanis. So really, I thought we'll go through all those marmakanis, but we'll have to do the different time. But let's just read the beginning of Ha'ara 26 to see the basic thing that the Rebbe says. First, the Rebbe says, so there's a question, there's a stira. The Yerushalmi in Huriyas, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph, says, Yochal Eimrim Lecha al Yemin Shel Smeil Val Smeil Shel Yemin, Talmud Leimar. He brings the same pasuk, or he brings a different pasuk. That the Yerushalmi basically says that the Leisaser is Dafke Ba'Eimrim al Yemin Shel Yemin Val Smeil Shel Smeil. It's a chastira.
The Yerushalmi is saying that if they tell you the opposite, you don't listen.
Don't listen. Yeah, the Yerushalmi is saying Dafke al Yemin Shel Yemin Val Smeil Shel Smeil is verkehrt from the ganze Sache. So the first possible answer that Rebbe brings the Sifri Shamarim Beinecha. Some of Farshei Rashi say that Rashi means like the Sifri. Who am I to decide? To me, it looks like they're saying Al Yemin Shu Smeil. But the Chachamim know what they're talking about. So therefore, even if I think that they're way off the mark. So then it's for effort to steer with the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi is saying Lefiha Emes. If the truth is that it's Yemin Shu Smeil, they don't have a license for that, and there's no mitzvah to listen to them Lefiha Emes. Even though I don't always have a way of knowing. That Lefiha Emes, they have no koyach to go against Torah, and you're not supposed to listen to them. But what Rashi and the Sifri are saying is that that a guy will say, I'll never listen to a Rav. Who's going to ever listen to Rav? Any time that I don't like what the Rav is saying, so the real truth is the Rav is saying, "Al Yemin Shel Smeil Val Smeil Shel Yemin." Zakt and that. After Zakt the Sifri, you think he's saying, "Al Yemin Shel Smeil." That's none of your business. You listen. But let's say if you're Emes, he's saying, "Al Yemin Shel Smeil." Torah is not telling us to listen to him. How do we know? How do we know? So you have so. There is cases when you know. I gave a shiur once on it on the Parsha Sheftim, but my computer crashed. I tried to find that file. No, really, I was looking today for that file because it is. I have to go look for it. But a bunch of Mefarshim have them that speak about it. Could be some of them are from down here at the bottom of the Hara. But in answering the stira, so they were answering it based on other cases. They were dealing with cases where there's no question that it's Yemin Shu Smeil. Mashiach in a regular case that I have a dictator, nobody likes the Rav who paskins against me. He's always saying, "Oh, you mean Shusmail? What's the you mean?" Huh? What does it have to do with Kul Fechumah? Yeah, that's right. He's wrong. Whoever the guy was against. V'shayni kiddush hachedesh dikakra atem afilu mezidi. I by kiddush hachedesh there is l'chol hadei says the din that afilu emrim al yimin shusmail. Al kiddush hachedesh that's the Mishnah by Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Gamliel that even if they say it that's taka wrong you listen. Kiddush hachedesh is a special gzeres hakasab. But by other dinei hatera according to these mefarshim, their samchus is when they're saying something that's correct. Avo miloshen Rashi shepirushi gam ben chamish lemikravei makim l'ramazim al yimin chulu val smeil muchach shekavanasi liyimin smeil mamish kibifnim. In Rashi you see it's kipshutei because Rashi says a loshen, a simple loshen. If he meant like the Sifriya, it would have to be clear in Rashi. He would have what? I read Shemash b'tidma. So therefore, according to Rashi, it's kipshutei, and that's why Rashi fits with the Hira that Rabbi Sinu can durchbrechen Torah. So go to the middle of the next paragraph. What other stira? Stira me'Yerushalmi mitartzin. The late Rashi daf. So there's a few answers, but here's one answer the Rebbe brings here. The Yerushalmi koi koidim shedonu b'Sanhedrin al derechza, aval acher shedonu chayev lekabel daitam acher haskam al kopanim. It's two different daggers. The Chachamim, before it was this Kayach al Yimin Shusmails, when there's an official Psak Din. When they went to a minyan and they made a Psak Din, so then it's a Filo al Yimin Shusmail val Smail Shu Yimin. But when they're saying Svaras, if it wasn't a Psak Din, it's just a saying a Svara, when they're being Shakal Vitari, so then it's al Yimin Shu Yimin val Smail Shu Yimin.
Before they paskin, you shouldn't listen to them. They didn't paskin.
What?
Like the Yishan with the puzzle of voting to the person. And then they come to the clock.
For extra good to kasha, there was some. Let me look for a second in this Torah because I remember he said something about it. Pashas Shifty. Yeah.
Maybe he's talking about it today. Let's say, I don't know if it's Shaykh, but they pass into one Bezdin, a lower Bezdin, it means just whatever, wrong, and he's tying wrong, so Kozman that he could prove why they're wrong, or whatever, he has reason to say they're wrong, he doesn't have to listen to them until it comes to Sanhedrin. Once it comes to Sanhedrin and they came to the same Askan as that Bezdin, then he has to follow them.
Yeah, but with Pashtas, the Yishalmi, I think over there is talking about the same Sanhedrin. Where's the pasuk? Does the Rebbe bring the Marmakam of the pasuk? Let's bring it.
It's in Shifting.
Pasuk. What? Yud Zayin what?
Yud Zayin.
Oh, I have it already.
Before that, they didn't take speaking, so the same thing.
So the Torah Tzimima is verkehrt. The Torah Tzimima is going the whole way with Mara Beinacha. And he brings the Ramban that the Rebbe is Mitzayim to, and he... What? Yeah, no, that's what I said. But the Torah Tzimima, there was a Mitzayim Behemshech to this Pshat. The Torah Tzimima is going with the other Pshat. So, Al Kapanim, you have your homework. Because... Chidushei Rav David on Sanhedrin, Sefer Yereim, Yad HaMelech, Be'er Chayfetz Hashem, Shah Yisef, Kikar La'adam, Amud Yerushalayim, Rivar, Re'im, Taz, Chasam Sefer, Tovei Sefer, Kera Shlema, hardest.
I have Wasserman.
What?
Right
here, Brad Wasserman.
Second place is
There's some Sfarim that the Rebbe never brings. Some Sfarim that the Rebbe...
Nachum, never brings it once, and every other time it's Ein it's got a Gimel.
Who?
Breast.
Where does the Rebbe bring?
As you were saying. Continue, yeah.
So the Rebbe brings it once, and every other time it's Ein it's got a Gimel. And it's
For me, it was always strange. The Rebbe never brings the Pardes Yosef.
He's around.
Who's
It's more recent, no? He's like in the last 40 years, no?
What? It's before the war. Before the war. Pardes Yosef was a Gerach Chassid. But it's a sefer with tremendous bekiyas. Malakit. The Rebbe, Derech Valach, he likes Malakit. What? No, different thing. He brings Achreinim and Peskim and Gemaras, like he brings Tershlemas and Chazal. And he brings from everything, from all his fun. The time of the Klichemda. The Klichemda the Rebbe brings, Chavis Yisrael, Klichemda. So you see there seems to be a pattern. There's Svarim that the Rebbe brings, at least he makes a point to bring, and Svarim the Rebbe doesn't bring.
What's the pattern?
Yeah, no, I mean a pattern, I meant a kavanah.
The one that bring and stuff.
There's Svarim that the Rebbe, sometimes it could be the person didn't bring enough Lubavitch Svarim, and that's it.
See the video where Yalis comes up to Rebbe, says he had Chavusa back at home, Mendo Kasha. And he wants to know, Kasha wants to know why the Rebbe doesn't, I'm upset at him or something. Rebbe says, what do you mean? I bring him all the time.
What?
What do you mean I bring him all the time?
The Rebbe brings him tremendously. The Rebbe, not only that, was ma'eded him, and he was ma'eded them to create this for him after. The Rebbe with him makes him mamish a big thing. But Teretz Mimah, the Rebbe brings also a lot. Allah nishgig lechem. The Rebbe used it, the Rebbe used it, but the Rebbe used it. The Rebbe used it Teretz Mimah.
This guy's a bigger.
This is the lawyer.
This guy's hammer holding.
Why do they put up the signs that Shala
See this?
They did it for money.
More respect than ever.
What?
It's like they're more respect than
I
ever.
didn't do it. I didn't want to come. I was going to boycott the whole thing.
What was the deal? Why?
Yeah, but now at the end of Asfeld gave money, and they gave out them. Yeah, Asfeld used to have money.
Who gave money? Who gave money for what? For this guy to come? This guy would come to give money?
He was supposed to be a big keeper. All the Bach went over to him.
Okay, what was the nice information?
Yeah.
Here's the guy that the Rebbe said to him.
It was a lawyer.
I think they're a lawyer. The Rebbe said to was machte mit der Hand. That was him.
Yeah.
Why were you doing it?
He went to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said, as a Rav, Talmidim, that Paskin as Mashiach will come. He was like, was machte mit der Hand.
It was like that type of guy.
What's it Memchas, the Shish Kislev.
What?
Memchas when you were later, Shish Kislev. You're married to Gary, not Gary.
Yeah.
Well, no Meisa. After Memchas was Chafi Cheshvan, married the Keryantif, and then Chav Zayin Cheshvan, and then Chav Ches Cheshvan. Chav Ches was when they finally signed the paper. It was the Chaimpernacht, das Chav Ches, no? Zayin, there was Chav Ches, and then was Shchedish Kislev, then Beis Kislev came back to Sfarim.
Where were you touching Memches? Shchedish Kislev. Oh, you guys have had a couple hash before this. I got shot.
Thinking too much thinking.
Where did the bottle go, please? Surface.
Anyways, I gotta go finish my email. I really, I
One quick
spent
advice
so
before
much.
you go.
Oh.
You have to drink it quick.
Careful, it's getting someone's Gemara wet.
Take the tablet away.
Tablet is fine. The Swarm is getting wet. Take it out. Take off the Gemara. Take off the Gemara.
Take away the Gemara?
Okay.
It's on recording.
Take, there's some tissues over there.
And
Yeah. Which mice? What's the mice?
You are supposed to send me, correct?
Still sort of